This is Veena from Cupcakes, the channel that's about baking and much more. Here's where you'll find quick and tasty recipes for new cooks and those with less time to spend in the kitchen. Okay then, let's get cracking with today's recipe. Welcome back. On receiving several requests for cake recipes with whole wheat flour, I decided to share my soft, amazingly moist vanilla cupcake recipe with you. This is a healthy recipe and one of my favorites. In this video, I'm going to show you two versions of this recipe, the regular one with eggs and the eggless version. So now let's start making some healthy and moist vanilla cupcakes right here at Cupcakes. We'll start with the regular vanilla cupcakes. To make these, we'll need maida or all-purpose flour, whole wheat flour, a little vanilla flavored custard powder or just plain corn flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt, oil, fine sugar, eggs, milk, vinegar, vanilla extract, and some chopped almonds and pistachios. We'll begin by preparing some buttermilk. From the half cup of milk we have here, I'll keep around 2 tablespoons aside to adjust the consistency of the batter at the end. And to the remaining milk, I'll add 1 teaspoon of vinegar. Let's stir this well and keep it aside for around 10 minutes. Now let's sift the dry ingredients. Since we are using 3 different kinds of flour, we'll sift the entire mix twice. We'll start with a quarter cup plus 2 tablespoons, that's 50 grams of whole wheat flour. Then to this we'll add half a cup and a quarter cup, that's 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons of maida, all of which adds up to around 110 grams. And then add in 1 tablespoon of vanilla flavored custard powder. You could use plain corn flour instead. Next we'll add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. Let's sift the entire mix one more time, but first we'll stir everything with a whisk. Now replacing some of the maida with whole wheat flour will give us healthier cupcakes, but atta tends to weigh cakes down and make them dense. To counter this effect, we are adding a little corn flour or custard powder, which is just flavored corn flour, to our dry ingredients. Corn flour makes cakes lighter. Next, we'll whip 7 tablespoons of oil, that could be any cooking oil without a strong odor, with half a cup plus 2 tablespoons of fine castor sugar. If you're using granulated sugar like I am today, then grind it coarsely in a mixer grinder first. Oil is the secret ingredient that will make our cupcakes moist and keep them moist even after 2 or 3 days. Whisking the oil and sugar well is an important step in this recipe. The idea is to incorporate as much air as possible in the batter. So we'll whisk the oil and sugar for at least 2 minutes. We need 2 eggs in this recipe, and we'll add them one by one, beating vigorously after each addition. Never break eggs directly into the batter. Break them into a saucer or a dish to first check that they're good. Let's mix in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and whisk everything quickly again. As you can see, I've whipped the mix really well. Now we'll have to add in the buttermilk that we had prepared and the dry ingredients. First, we'll add half of the flour mix and then half of the buttermilk, stirring the batter only till it's lump-free. Now let's add the remaining flour mix and the rest of the buttermilk. We can now switch to using a spatula and mix the batter carefully till it's nice and smooth. If you want the cupcakes to be soft, make sure you don't overbeat the batter. Overworking it could give you cupcakes that are dense and tough. Okay, let's check if the batter has a ribbon consistency. It does. The consistency is just right. So there's no need to add the milk we had kept aside. I'm using these paper cups today. They don't need to be greased before adding the batter to them. but they're slightly larger than cupcake molds, and so our cupcakes could be more like muffins. But whether you're using a muffin pan, cupcake molds or paper cups, make sure you fill each mold to just around 2/3 of its capacity. I was able to divide the batter into 10 paper cups. Let's sprinkle some of the chopped nuts over the batter in each cup. I'll now bake the cupcakes in my preheated oven at 170 degrees centigrade. That's 340 Fahrenheit. I'll check on the cakes after 15 minutes. Here are our delicious looking cupcakes. They took 22 minutes to bake. Oven times vary, so your cupcakes might take a little less or a little more time than mine did. I'll do the toothpick test again for your benefit. Absolutely clean. We'll now let the cupcakes cool for around 10 minutes and then we'll see how they've actually baked. Time to check our cupcakes. See how evenly this one has baked? And it's so soft. Let me cut it so you can see its texture. The vanilla cupcakes have risen well and are soft and fluffy. Now let's move on to making soft and moist eggless vanilla cupcakes. To make these, we'll need all the same ingredients as before, except for one change. We'll be replacing the eggs with yogurt. Yogurt gives the cupcakes a good texture and also adds to their flavor. Now I'm making a smaller batch of these eggless cupcakes and will use 3 tablespoons of yogurt in the recipe. However, if you want to use the same proportions of ingredients as we did earlier, then you'll have to use a 1/4 cup or 4 tablespoons of yogurt instead, okay? Now here's the flour mix I've prepared. It has 2/3 of a cup of maida, 1/3 of a cup of whole wheat flour, 2 teaspoons of custard powder, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/3 teaspoon of salt. I've already sifted this mix twice. And in this bowl, I've whipped 6 tablespoons of oil with half a cup of fine sugar. And this is the buttermilk I prepared. From the 6.5 tablespoons of milk I had in this bowl, I removed 1 tablespoon and added 3/4 of a teaspoon of vinegar to the remaining milk. I then set it aside for 10 minutes and it is now ready for use. Here's the milk I had removed for adjusting the batter consistency later on. In this bowl, I have 3 tablespoons of yogurt. I'll whisk it lightly with a fork to smoothen it and then add it to the mix of oil and sugar. As you know, eggs are good leavening agents and help a cake rise well, besides making it tasty. This being an eggless recipe, whipping the batter well before adding the dry ingredients plays an even more important role in making the cupcakes light, airy and soft. You could use an electric beater if you want, but since this is a small quantity, a whisk works just fine. Now let's add 3/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla extract to the wet ingredients and whisk everything again. That done, we'll mix in the dry ingredients and the buttermilk in the same way as in the earlier recipe, once again making sure we don't overwork the batter. The batter looks like it could do with the milk we had kept aside. The consistency is now just right. This time I'm using silicone cupcake molds that are soft and yet hold their shape and also don't need any greasing. Instead of these, you could use aluminium or steel watties or else cupcake liners like this with a muffin pan. Let's now fill these molds. I filled 8 of the silicone molds and I've greased and dusted this wattie with flour to use up the last of the batter. I'll bake these at 170 degrees centigrade in my preheated oven. After 20 minutes of baking, here are our perfectly baked eggless vanilla cupcakes. I baked them at 170 degrees centigrade for the first 15 minutes and then at 180 degrees centigrade, that's around 360 Fahrenheit, for the last 5 minutes. Eggless cakes don't brown as well as regular cakes. Hence we need to increase the temperature towards the end so they can get a nice pale brown color on top. The toothpick test confirms our cupcakes are done and not raw inside. We'll now let the cupcakes cool for a few minutes. If you want to see how to make a simple buttercream frosting for topping these cupcakes, You'll find this in my video on soft custard cupcakes. The link is in the description box below. This one has baked perfectly and evenly. Let's check one of the silicone mold cupcakes. It's perfect. And inside it's light and fluffy and nice and soft. You have to taste these vanilla cupcakes to see how deliciously soft and moist they are. You'll love them. So do go ahead and give both recipes a shot. Don't forget to give me some feedback, okay? Hope you enjoyed today's video. And do stop by again for yet another quick and tasty recipe. Till then, take care. Happy cooking!